United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Supervisor Schneiderman.
Here.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Here.
Councilman Martell.
Here.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Scavone.
Present.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, so we're all here today, and we're going to start with community choice aggregation. Various questions, and the answers to those questions have been raised, and answers will be presented today. So we have a number of people, including Deputy Supervisor, Frank Sapone, who will introduce this, but we also have Jessica Strombach, CEO of Jewel Assets, Greg Lerman, Senior Vice President of Jewel Assets, and Mike Gordon from Jewel Assets as well, and Lynn Arthur is here, who is an energy advisor to the town. All right, Frank?
Yeah, I just provide a brief introduction. When the town board passed the enabling legislation for CCA in 2019, actually, it was understood that there were technical and policy obstacles that existed here on Long Island that didn't exist elsewhere in the state. And on the surface, they appeared to be prohibitive to the implementation of CCA on Long Island. After a lot of work over the past 4 years, with a great deal of support from our colleagues at Jewel Asset, with the ability to develop a really productive working relationship with LIPA, in large part due to John Bouvier's efforts to get us to have a very frequent and candid conversations with LIPA Board Trustee Nancy Goroff. An important part of that as well was some significant legislation that Assemblyman Deal drafted, got approved by the Senate and the Assembly, and ultimately signed by the governor to compel LIPA to be more in conformance with the PSC order that created CCA. And all of those obstacles took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a great deal of energy, but we are at a point where CCA is a viable entity in Southampton. The challenge now and the ultimate question is, if we go out to bid, and we have, will we get competitive bids, and will they meet the satisfaction of the board to provide those competitive bids to the community? That's the end point of the process, and Jewel is here today to tell you a little bit about CCA, because Councilwoman McNamara and Councilman Martell were not part of the process when we initially drafted and approved the legislation. So a little background information I thought would be helpful for context, and then talk about where we are now and what we can expect to be shared with us and for the board to decide about in the month ahead. So they'll give you some detail with regard to that. To that end, I want to introduce, to repeat what the supervisor already did, Jessica Strombach, who's the CEO for Jewel, and Mike Gordon, who's the founder and Chief Strategy Officer for Jewel. Greg Lerman, who is the Senior Vice President, and most of you, if not all of you, know Lynn Arthur is on our Sustainability Committee, but she's been an integral part of the communication, not only with the community, but also with the Sustainability Committee about our progress towards getting to where we are today. So I'm going to do what I often do. I may be important for the occasion, but not necessary. So I'm going to introduce those same four people and ask them to come to the podium. We have a brief slide presentation, and there'll be an opportunity for questions from the town board members.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jessica, Mike, Lynn, Greg.
Good morning.
So I think Mike was going to kick us off with just a little bit of background history, just to kind of level set with things we hopefully already all familiar with, and then we're going to go into some of the process points for the next steps in taking this decision, and obviously answer any questions that you have. Also, obviously, please interrupt any time. So this is a question and answer thing, and Mike, why don't you kick us off with an introduction?
Great. I know that some of you were involved from the beginning. Others of you have seen portions of this presentation, so I'm going to go through the first several slides fairly quickly. I will obviously do some pausing so that you guys can ask questions for clarifications, but ultimately just know if it doesn't answer anything new, it'll be really quick. We are about, as you know, expanding the renewable market and empowering at the local level. It's who we are as a firm. Clearly we have experience, successful experience, as you will hear more about. And I know that you guys went through a pretty robust reference check prior to engaging with us. I can say though, and let's go to the next slide, so we did, in essence, organize the community choice aggregation market in New York State. The first one we did was with Westchester County, and that first contract was much like this experience, because in the rest of the state, you have a competitive market. In Long Island, you have a newly competitive market. And this is really the first time that with electricity supply, we've been able to take advantage of that newly competitive market. And it has been almost like founding it initially in the state. It's been a similar, very satisfying, involved, engaged, resilient process. So a quick description around community choice aggregation. You know that your bill is actually two bills. It's the electricity supply and it's the poles and wires component. This does nothing to the poles and wires. That remains the same. The maintenance remains being done by LIPA. The billing is still done by LIPA. The collection is still done by LIPA. Everything, the only thing that does change is that your competitive electricity supply choice is your own rather than designated for you by the state. So it takes a state decision of default, leaves that option in place, and moves that ultimate first choice decision to the town. That's the only change. And in essence, what that allows us to do, as you know, is, and Jessica will describe this process in more depth, but it allows us to move essentially the entire community onto supply of choice, renewable content of choice, consumer protection of choice. And you've already taken a look at that protective contract, and so you've had a chance to vet it, and that will not be the last chance that you have to vet. Okay, this I've said, and this is some of the state objectives. And I think that it's important. So yes, we've talked about supporting renewable generation. The contract is a consumer protective contract. And the other thing that we are working on is reducing volatility and protecting against inflation. And those are two different things. As you know, the LIPA price will change from month to month, and it can change a lot, and that's volatility. And overall, though, the price is going up, and when you sign a fixed or less volatile rate, you are protecting consumers against that ultimate inflation, underlying inflation. I could tell you also that our experience since that initial Westchester contract is we have continued to successfully save residents money, $18 million last year. However, I want to underscore, and this we were talking briefly before, you can't say we are going to save you X. We know that we will save residents versus what they can do on their own. That we know. We know that it will be less volatile if not fixed. That'll be a piece of the town's decision when we're presented with options, we'd expect. We can't predict what spot rates are going to do for the next year or something like that. So while we have historically saved and versus utility rates, and that's a greener product versus a standard mix product that the utility is putting out there. So our green product has historically saved. You don't want to say, you will, we guarantee you, because that's just not fair. It's not communicative with
Brookhaven sort of
consumers.
did that, though, when they went to their CCA with gas.
Yeah, they did that.
And they said, this is how much we're gonna save consumers,
Yeah.
$5 million, whatever it is. But now it looks like that's turning out to not have been the case, because gas prices dropped down from where they locked in at, and it actually may cost consumers more.
Yeah, they did what they did, and maybe it was not the optimal time.
I questioned it at the time.
Yeah.
When they said this is going to be the savings, I said, well, it's speculative savings.
Yeah, and that's actually, we discussed it, Frank and I discussed it, I think we discussed it, we may have discussed it. To say this will happen is not what we want to do for
It
consumers.
certainly will give you the predictability of rate.
Yes.
you know.
Predictability.
How long of a period do you typically lock in for?
That's gonna be totally up to you. We will have offers of varied lengths of the contract, and that will be something that we will explore together, what we feel is optimal.
And the consumer still has the ability to opt out throughout the period.
No penalty at any point.
So if it turns out that rates have dropped and they can do better by not being part of CCA, they can leave
Yep.
CCA.
And then if it then turns around again, they can opt in at no choice, at no
charge,
cost.
no
Yeah.
charge. And the process for opting out isn't so convoluted or complicated.
Nope, Jessica will go into it, but it's, web, phone, mail, postage
I'm
paid.
sorry.
No, I was just gonna say predictability, but now you have residents in Brookhaven that are paying over double what they would have paid if they had stayed with the changing market. And from what I'm understanding, it's yes, there's a process to opt out, but as we all know, getting that information out to the public, there's a lot of seniors on fixed incomes now paying a lot more than they would have been, and they don't know that they have the option to opt out. So I think we have to be very careful and know that, make sure that these people know that they have that option and how to do it, because
Absolutely.
it's,
And that
and
was the
also,
Brookhaven
but also be
experience.
proactive and let them know, hey, listen, you're currently not saving, like, this is what it would be if you opted out. Because we're putting them into that position.
Yeah, but
Well,
And
We
I'd
also
like to
opt-
qualify that too. That was the Brookhaven experience with gas. And that is not the product that we're discussing here.
Right, and we opted not to go with gas for a variety of reasons. This is probably one of them. The volatility and source and cost is important. It's
We don't have that
more
many
control than we have.
customers.
Yeah.
We have a company that's much more versed in this than any of us are collectively or apart, and that's why we.
Our customer base for natural gas isn't nearly as.
Isn't, yeah.
It's-
Yeah.
There's a couple areas that are served by Keyspan or National Grid, whatever it is, but It's not that many customers.
And fair to say that while the timing of that contract may not have been optimal, and by the way, we have a record of really having a sense of the market. We've saved $18 million in one contract, 20 over the course of everyone in toto over the course of our existence. When you add the Westchester, which we also did, that's another 17. We've done well, and we were also kicking and screaming, well, delicately kicking and screaming at the base of the pandemic to say, hey guys, now's the time to lock in.
Yeah, I
but
just don't
people
understand, if they
didn't.
can opt in and opt out at any time, why not give them the options and let them opt in to start?
You get nowhere near the same scale, because with opt-out, you get roughly 70 to 80% of the community participating, and it is predictable for the supplier, so they can negotiate better contractual rates. When you do an opt-in program, you're gonna get roughly 5% of residents, you're gonna get nowhere near the aggregation clout. You have all the options, it's just more powerful from a price and consumer protection perspective this way.
And so your experience is always, the track record has been very good for consumers.
Yes,
So-
and also I
So
wanna,
sort of Brookhaven is sort of the anomaly, but,
well, we didn't do that.
and that was, that's a different
With a
company.
different firm,
It's a
yes.
different firm,
But I do
your
wanna say-
experience has been very positive.
Yes, and I do want to say fairness to Brookhaven. I do expect that over the long run, that'll look better. If they did do a long-term contract, I do expect, they may not have timed it
two-year
perfectly,
thing.
but over the 2-year period of time, I do expect it'll look better. But it's fair to say that you want to do it when, when you are expecting a rising price environment.
Right.
We
And
have
that's
a
hard to
lot-
predict, wars and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Policies that things can affect.
And you're protected against that.
Yeah.
So I'll just scooch through pretty quick because this Jess is reminding me.
I think I was gonna, so,
Okay.
I think that this was.
Here you go,
Sure,
Jess.
just
All yours.
Introduction, great. So we're getting into, this is the part of the sort of more process. To answer your question, also, there is an extensive education and outreach portion of this service that is after the prices are known, so that you really are able to educate around what's actually happening at the time. That's part of this contractual process, that it will start after the contract's signed. Should the town go forward, we will then educate again, so that people are made aware actively, not in a passive way that they have to look themselves, but actively made aware of what the situation is and what their choices are, just to also add that in. So if we just go to the next slide. Okay, so if we look a little bit, residents, the town will choose a default rate, right? A default option. It could be, like we have here some of the choices. It could be a 50%, it could be the standard power, it could be 100% renewable, right? The residents at that point, they have a letter that they are sent in the mail. All qualifying households and small businesses are sent this letter that then informs them of what's going to be happening and what their choices are. They then can go to the website. They can, of course, call our helpline. Our number will be on their electricity bill, so that they just can call us directly with any issues that they have. And at that point, they then make the choice that they want to make. So there are many, many ways for the residents to either stay in the program and do nothing, or make another choice. I have to say that a lot of our clients end up making another choice rather than opting out of the program.
So they have a range of choices, to
Yeah.
either to not participate or to participate, let's say, in 100% renewable,
Yeah,
50%. So those who are driven by the renewable piece, even
Yeah.
if they, means they pay a little bit more,
yeah,
it would be helpful to know what percentage of what LIPA to PSEG, the energy they're currently getting, how much is the renewable component of the current energy supply?
About 26%.
About 26%.
Yeah.
Now, will that change? Because I know there's a power purchase agreement with the wind power suppliers. So is that going to go way up?
Not way up, certainly. It may go incrementally up.
Okay, because they're not online yet.
But they have to hit 26%, which basically means that they may actually see it as an opportunity to purchase more fossil elsewhere.
Right, I just want to make sure, because if somebody says, I believe in, addressing climate change, and I want a renewable package, and I'm gonna go with this 50% renewable, I just want to make sure that that's not actually less renewable than if
Yeah.
they opted out, so.
Yeah.
Okay, 'cause
No,
the state's
it
been
would
very
be in
big
that
on
case
promoting
76% New York renewables, just to be clear. So you have what goes into the grid, but this is additive. So we purchase additive RECs from New York State, right, renewable energy certificates. And the 50% is in fact 50% renewable energy certificates, right, from New York State, and 50% renewable energy certificates from outside of New York State. So the two are added together. Only the 50% New York energy certificates count in this program, but in fact, 100% of their consumption is going to be covered by renewable energy certificates. So it's a very renewable program. It's a very powerful thing for the town to do to support sustainability objectives, because you're really changing the amount of support that there are for renewables in the state. It's very important. And if you look at the impact of CCA across New York State, as of 2021, which was only 5 years after the program kicked off, CCAs were over 30% of the total competitive renewables market. So this is one of the most powerful thing, if not the most powerful thing, a municipality is able to do to really increase the level of support that is provided through energy choices.
So you really only purchase from renewable sources,
They
whether in New York State
It's-
or outside of the state?
It's covered for, New York has an interesting thing. You purchase from who you purchase from, but it's a contractual agreement where you buy the certificates produced by these power plants
Does
after
that
the fact.
include nuclear as renewable or not?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because some people consider that
Yeah.
renewable.
Yeah.
but they're
Just to
other-
clarify one thing, when we get the bids in, we don't know what we're gonna get. We ask for certain things. Show me 12 months, show me 24 months, show me 27 months, right? What time of year is it? We wanna mess around with the length to try to get the best bang for our buck, right? The same goes for 50% or 100%. There used to be a day where we sat with you all and only did 100%. But it's gotten more expensive to be 100%, so we've asked for a 50% option. Sometimes we ask for a standard option, right? And what your choice will be, based on the bids we get, is to determine first, what are the options we like? You might say, throw away 12 months, not worth it, don't like the price. Or you might say, throw away a 36-month, it's too long, right? So you'll first choose what the choices that they will see are. And then you'll choose which of those options is the default. That's your choice. And so what we do is we go out and we get these indicative bids, and Jess will run you through the calendar of how this happens, and you'll see the bids, but you won't act on them. But we'll talk about them together. You'll say things like, I want a longer bid, just tell me what it's like longer or shorter, or 50%, 100%, whatever it may be. And then we'll get what's called executable pricing, which will be approximately 2 weeks later. By that time, we're gonna ask you to make a quick decision. You'll have already read the contract, which your attorneys already do. You'll already have seen the pricing. It'll move a little, right? And we'll make certain decisions based on indicatives. If it's that price and that length, no more, no less, as long as it includes option A, B, and C, or just B and C, right? So that's how it goes. The consumer doesn't just get a bill. You first decide what their options are and which of those options will be the default.
And I think we set sort of a precondition that it had to be less to the consumer than they're currently paying, or
And-
equal less, or
Yeah,
something like that.
and
But
less.
weighted average of what they've been paying over a certain period of time.
That's right, and New York State has determined what less means. That's defined. It's the average price over 4 quarters in the past, and they will publish that number.
Right, and
So it
then
won't
we
be for
also,
us or
and that
you to
was
decide.
inclusive of all fees, tariffs,
Yes.
administrative fees. that
Yes.
But we also
The
have,
actual bill that they pay would go down.
Yeah, I think-
we also have a market that, and I know in Westchester, this was the case when I first became aware of this, I had a lot of skepticism and called a lot of places, and my skepticism completely reversed itself. But there are also people that are willing to pay more for renewable source energy.
Understood.
Yeah, and-
Because they think it's important. And we have part of that in this market. It seems to be consistent across the markets as well. You know, it seems similar.
Yeah, if
to
it's a personal
5-6%.
choice, I have no problem with that, but the average consumer who participates, that was a precondition. That it would not increase the cost of electricity for them.
And the other thing that I want to emphasize is if you fix a price, even if it is slightly above, and that has generally been our experience, that it may be above this month's price, but not above the average over the last 12, or even if it is, in some cases, slightly above the average of the last 12. If you fix a price, what you're doing is you're protecting against future price movements, the volatility and the underlying inflation. It happens to be my belief that now is a good time to do reduction of volatility and significant price, at least a significant portion of it be fixed. That
Question
is
about-
my belief.
A question about the last average 12 months, or 4, 24, 36, whatever we choose, is that adjusted for inflation?
No,
That's just hard number, okay.
hard numbers.
So that should-
I think
Good
there's
idea.
And
another
LIPA doesn't adjust either.
important
Yeah.
just point here, just for future reference, because this is gonna be real by the time residents are put onto this program, assuming it all works out. The LIPA is planning to roll out time of use rates. So that means that during a particular day, prices will go up and down by a multiple of 3. Right, so at night it's gonna be 6 cents, during the afternoon it will be, I believe they posted 19. So what this is providing is a stable rate where it's gonna be lower than 19 and higher than 6, if you know what I mean. So it's cutting across in the middle. And if you just go to the next slide, so this is the variability that already, Frank, my apologies, could you just go back one? So this is the variability that already exists in LIPA's rates today, right? They go up and down quite a bit. This is from a couple of years ago, but it's still the same now. And then if we go to an example from Rochester, so this kind of puts everything on one slide. So here you'll notice that at the start, Rochester ended up saving a little bit less than, they saved $2.8 million on this particular contract. You'll notice that, and this was for 100% renewable. When the contract began, the rate that was provided on average was actually higher than that month's rate from our G&E. And then over the time period, due to, in this case, also a war, but also just on average, due to inflation, they saved over time, right? So it adds out. If you added what is going to be the reality on Long Island in 2024 and forward, you're looking at a daily rate that changes, where the average is not known because it's dependent on the individual household's consumption, right? And this is a choice where you're looking, hopefully, that it is, say 50% New York renewable, and it is known for the duration. And what that does is that it gives the town the option of giving residents that security if they choose to stay in the program. That they will know what their electricity cost is going to be, and that it'll be over a period of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so throughout the day, it's the same price for
That's right.
the electrons that you use.
That's right.
whether you
It's
use them
not
at
gonna go up
midnight
and
or
down, that's
2
right.
in the afternoon.
I wanna-
So that whole process of time of use is really geared towards making sure, or incentivizing people to use high energy using devices at times when the grid is kind of
That's right.
static. So we're now removing that, and we're saying the grid is going to handle full use all the time at the
grid-
same price.
The grid prices will still, that is correct. So the grid prices are gonna still go up and down. The energy prices, the energy component is gonna remain flat. What LIPA does with the grid portion is doesn't get touched by the CCA.
But what I'm saying is that the reason why they're varying the rates is to kind of get people to use higher energy devices at times.
That's right.
So we'll be taking that out of the equation.
Yes.
So that basically, we don't know if the grid's gonna handle that usage
Well,
at all of those
The
times.
grid is capable of handling the.
Because we've already people complaining that they're losing their power at certain times in the
Right.
summer when people are charging cars and doing other things and running
Right.
air conditioners.
Yeah, and to be clear, folks will still have the opportunity to get into a time of use rate.
Okay.
The thing that is different is residents are going to be changed, whether we do this program or not. It's gonna happen. Will they have that choice? If we do this program, they will have the choice to do the time of use or to get more protection over the course of the year. And if we do not, they will be changed.
I think it's just important, it's important context
Yeah.
to know the context in which the decision's getting taken. Because unlike before, where it was the variability you saw on the other slides, this is gonna be a slightly different situation, right? So it's providing
Is there
continued
still a
context.
time of day, I guess, I know there's like different components to the bill. So
Mhm.
there's like delivery of electricity.
Yeah.
And the electricity itself. And
Yeah.
So LIPA still charges for that delivery,
Yes, that's right.
correct?
And that's
Yes.
gonna
And
stay the
that
same.
changes by the hour?
That's not a time of use
not a
construct,
time
at
of
least
use.
from what
I
they are.
It is.
The
It
delivery
it's
itself
both.
is?
Yeah, it's
LIPA's
both.
done a pretty convoluted thing here. They've affected both sides of the bill.
Yeah,
And
so
it's-
that part's
But
changed.
we don't-
Wow,
So
so,
delivery
okay.
changes
We
time
don't-
of day too.
But we don't know until it actually happens.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of speculation, you know.
Because they're trying to get people to use their devices in times when they have the power to give them.
Right, they got, it's like
Well,
congestion
there's
pricing.
another
They wanna
component
charge
to that.
more when,
That's it.
you know, in the middle of the day.
There's another component to that one of the issues is when people don't listen as to, and most don't, when to use and when not to use. And they start to use during peak times. The first thing that happens is that the utility goes to under contract with somebody with a generator somewhere to produce power to feed that into the grid. And that's where we have a really big problem. And that's what we're trying to solve here, because people, they don't see it until there's a blackout, and they don't react to it until there's a blackout. And when there's a potential of a blackout, the generators get fired up, and we defeat the whole purpose of why we're doing this to begin with.
Yeah, and that's interesting, Lynn. So what you're saying is that while that hasn't been specifically determined, they will experience some time of use changes nonetheless. We will just be reducing that, muting that a bit for them.
Right, the
It's
biggest-
interesting.
I don't know if it's like 80-20, you know, it's the
Mhm.
biggest impact is on the power supply portion. But to Cindy's point, they will feel the pinch of running, you know, on the distribution side of the bill as well, but to a smaller degree.
Got it.
I have a question about geography. How does geography figure into the sustainability component? You mentioned the city of Rochester that's about 30 miles away from the biggest sustainable energy source probably on the planet. And, you know, they've only how does that figure into the grid? You know, we're out here on the eastern end of Long Island. So you're saying it's a certificate program
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
makes it, that equalizes it throughout the state?
Also, where a utility actually purchases the power from isn't decided by geography as much as you think it would be. It's more what's the cheapest resource. Yeah, you would think it would be,
Right.
because RG&E's power mix should be even cleaner than it is.
Mhm.
But because they purchase from a wider region, the power mix is actually quite at basically the same as here.
And the
It's much closer,
certificates
yeah.
themselves are in-state. That's the only requirement to call yourself renewable. So Rochester can buy the same certificates that we here in Southampton can.
And an individual homeowner that has solar panels and a battery, can they sell electricity back into the grid under CCA
Yes,
and
it's
get
the
paid
same.
for it?
Yes, and none
They
of that
get
gets
paid for it.
impacted, yes.
Okay.
It doesn't get impacted, it's a separate portion of
Okay.
the.
Am I reading that right?
As well as CCA programs that we may as a town also provide, where we produce local
Yeah.
energy, that energy also
Yes.
brings us back
Yep.
into.
Yes.
None of that
Frank, can you
gets
go back
shifted.
one? I just wanted to make sure I was reading it right, because is that when it began in September 21? It looks like you locked in at a rate that was higher than the rate they were paying,
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct,
Yep.
yeah.
but it turned out to be a good bet.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's again, one of those scenarios where it was higher than that month, but not higher, or maybe just very slightly higher than the trailing 12.
Right, so there have been points where during the course of that, people who were out of the program were paying less, but that's where it dips below
That's
that
correct.
Yep.
dashed line.
That's correct.
But for the most part, they've been ahead.
That's
Yep.
correct.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, it
And
looks
that's-
like 2 months total out of 24.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was for, the other thing that I think is really important to know there is that was for 100% renewable, 100% New York renewable. So that automatically there's a premium that's always added on, by necessity onto that, because renewables are more expensive than standard. Yeah.
So I've also, there's a lot of numbers get thrown around.
Yeah.
That the energy production for Long Island in particular, for our area, is about 90% fossil fuel driven.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming that's probably a pretty good number. And one of the whole issues here is that we want to get that number down too.
Yeah.
And we are doing that by implementing these kinds of programs. Am I correct in that?
That's correct.
Yes.
So that, and not only are you doing it, but you're doing the most effective thing you can do, right? So there isn't a more effective program, because you're able to cover, if you want, 100% with New York renewables. It's an extremely effective way of lowering the town's carbon footprint. Like, it's massive, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if we just look, just to repeat again, and then I'm gonna go into next steps, you're selecting a default rate within which residents will have other choices if they choose to take them. They are free to opt out at any time. It creates price security, and it supports renewables. So that's the basic outline of the program. We can go to the next slide. So just to a little bit go over where we are today. We had 2022, LIPA amended the retail choice tariff to allow this to happen, a lot thanks to Fred Thiel's legislation and all of your very hard work. So congratulations there. January 2023, LIPA enabled consolidated billing, another thing that was important for solar in this case. There was an outreach and education program that has already been conducted with the residents about the program, meetings, etc., letting people know that the town was considering this option. In June, Jewel issued an RFP to suppliers. We have been working with them since, preparing them to come into the Long Island market, a couple of them for the first time. So that's something that they've been working hard to do. And now we're at the stage where we are waiting for the first indicative pricing. So that will let us know, where, like Greg was pointing out, the different options that there will be and what that pricing will look like, right? On September 7th, we will be back here with all of you to discuss that pricing. So you guys can all see the options, we can talk it over, and you can and you can understand what that will look like. On September 12th, should all of this stay according to schedule, September 12th, we will have the opportunity to vote on a memorandum of understanding. In the memorandum of understanding, you will have the indicative pricing. And what that vote is about is providing, it gives the supervisor, it is a non-binding memorandum of understanding, and it gives the supervisor the right to sign the contract should the final prices come in matching or mirroring those that are in the memorandum of understanding. They might not be exactly the same, but they will be very, very close, or we will not move forward, right? So September 12th is the date at which that vote is taken. Yes,
Can I
please.
just add one
Yeah.
thing? The prices that come in that are actionable on the 26th, they go stale in hours. So the bid comes in, and 8 hours later, those numbers are no longer offered to us. We need to make a quick decision on the 26th. So that's why what our process is to get the prices first, weeks earlier, so you can look at them and take a slow decision. So when you're making your MOU and you're signing the MOU, what you're really doing is you're saying, okay, I've had a week to look at these numbers, and what we're thinking as a board is, as long as we have choice A and C, or B and C, or A, B, and C, your choices, as long as the price is what this says, all right, we go up to this, but not to that, right? And you're making parameters, and you're gonna execute an MOU that says, so long as these are the choices, and this is the price, we're gonna move. That way, on the 26th, we don't have to hurry and think and make a quick decision, right? Your decision is, was it the same as we set forth in the MOU? If so, just go ahead and do it. And ordinarily, when we do this, there might be 15 different municipalities that have to do that same thing. And that's why this process came together this way, that you don't really have a big decision to make on the 26th because you've had plenty of time to think it all through already. Right? So that's why the prior meeting, the MOU vote, is really where you're gonna do your thinking, you won't be under the gun. And that's where we're gonna ask you to make some decisions. So you'll see the prices on the 7th. We'll be here to talk, ask questions, let us answer them. Why is the length this way? We've had one, why does it say 27 months and not 24? Well, because it's this time of year and those are the 3 cheapest months. You know, we'll talk it all through. You'll have the weekend to chew on it and just go through it. And then on the 12th, we're gonna try to make some decisions here, right? Parameters that we set.
Is that making sense?
So one question on that, with the LIPA commission hearings that have been going on relentlessly now for a while, I think we're having the last one out here. And frankly, I don't know what decision's gonna come out of these hearings and how long it's going to be, or whether that impacts our decision or not. I don't believe it does, because I'm not quite sure what the legislature is going to do in that regard. But we're hopeful that the changes that they do make will actually augment this process going forward. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that some of the ultimate decisions, so one, there's the issue of, are they gonna save $70 million or some subset of that by getting rid of PG&E? That's one thing that, and I think another thing is that board going to be an elected board, and how will that board be comprised? I think those are probably the two key decisions. They will not affect this program, those two decisions. I think that what this program could do is LIPA has identified 47 loops that they will upgrade to put distributed energy resources on to create better reliability, as you are pointing out. And those are things that we can dynamically contribute to and participate in to make sure that the reliability here remains. But that's something that's totally separate from the supply decision. It is an additive capability within CCA, but none of the decisions that they're making are at all interactive with supply rate.
Because, just for the board's edification, we have CDG projects that I alluded to before. And sometimes some of the holdups of those actually come from that side, the interconnectivity charges and those sorts of things, right? And that's not anything to do with this, but it's important to know that we're able to take what we produce here and put it back into our local grid,
Yep.
call it a microgrid, just for,
Yeah.
And Fred Teal is lead sponsor on some great legislation
Exactly.
that is, I think, his priority legislation that will address that.
yes. All right, thank you.
If I may, it might be useful to add for the board's information that when we started this process, it's fair to say that LIPA and PSEG didn't put out the welcome mat and greet these overtures with enthusiasm.
You're so polite.
But if you go to the PSE&G website now, they are advertising as a
Yeah.
benefit to the consumers participating in a CCA program. And their promotion is, if your community makes it available, we are committing to making it work for you and affording you the consumer protections that are intrinsic in CCA. They've got a 2 or 3 page portion of their website promoting CCA as an asset to the community, and as I read it, making their commitment to cooperate with consumers who intend to make this choice or have the opportunity to make this choice. I think that level of cooperation is an added dimension of how well the consumer can be informed by other sources and also can be protected by the suppliers, those responsible for the maintenance and upkeep, and if we adopted the CCA program.
This may be a shock, and as Frank is saying, but our own internal folk, specifically the folks who have been dealing with this utility team, are telling us this is the best utility in the state with whom to deal.
Yeah, they've been super helpful.
That was after you called Nancy Doro.
That's because,
Get the program.
yes, yes, yes.
Just saying.
So let's just, okay, so those are the steps. Let's just go straight to the program launch. All right, so the next pieces here, just to remind everyone, is the pre-approval of the supply agreement, the ESA, that's happened. The pricing benchmarks should be coming in, or the indicative pricing will be coming in September 6th, assuming everything stays on schedule. I just want to flag there is a small chance that this schedule might slip. It will not slip significantly, but slip a little bit. But September 6th is our scheduled date. That will give those ranges of options that Greg has been going over of, different ranges of months, different ranges of amount of renewables. And at that time, during that period, before we get the final pricing, we will need a vote and an approval of the signing of the non-binding MOU that just gives the supervisor the ability to move forward with the program should the final prices come in within the range that you guys have agreed to. Okay, so that's the next thing on the table at this stage.
Also, if I could add, Jessica and Mike have made reference to MOUs, and in this case, the ESA. Those are 2 documents that are currently being reviewed by Kathleen and Mark in our town attorney's office, and any questions or concerns or changes that they would like to make, they're working with the attorney at Jewel to make those changes and vet it so that it reflects the board's interest and protects the community. The other piece of this, and maybe I'm stating the obvious here, but the September 12th meeting at which you will be confronted with a resolution or presented with a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an MOU is the same model we do all the time with resolutions authorizing the supervisor to enter into a contract. We state in the resolution the contract appoints this person, there's a maximum dollar amount that we would expend, in the whereas clauses and the resolve, all the conditions of that contract, if they're met, the board says the supervisor is authorized to sign. This is an absolute mimic of that. If all the conditions that you see in the MOU are met, then you give the permission to the supervisor to sign it. If they are not met, then that permission doesn't exist. So it's not a foreign entity, although its content is a little different. Procedurally, it's something that probably half of the resolutions we do at every board meeting are authorizing signatures of documents. So I just wanted to put that context in there, if it's helpful.
Thank you, Frank.
No, that's very helpful.
And I believe this is our last slide. Do we have? There we go. So again, just the next steps, repeating the dates. September 7th is when you should be getting the indicative. We will be here again to talk with indicative pricing to actually look at and go over together. And then September 12th will be the vote on the memorandum of, or the resolution.
Authorizing resolution.
Authorizing resolution, yeah.
And that September 12th meeting is scheduled to be an executive session, because it will discuss the specifics of a contract, a potential contract.
Yeah.
Any further questions from the board?
No, but thank you, guys. It's been a long period of time, and I'm feeling good, but again, as you said, just for the public's education, until we see those numbers, there's no decision that we can make. But,
It has been incredible, both, behind the scenes in terms of working with all of the counterparties, obviously, LIPA and the Jewel team and Lynn, and also with your team here. It has been incredible. We have achieved a good deal to get to this point, and there's the home stretch, but really
Are you,
remarkable.
Cautiously optimistic that you'll see numbers that are competitive cost-wise?
Yes.
Okay.
Good way to say
For,
it.
for you, Mike, you stretch your neck
Perfect
out.
description of how we are.
It is.
It is the.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very
all.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Pleasure.
And we're on.
Oh,
We're on schedule.
goodness.
Incredible.
Any drive westward is much better than anything you might have experienced eastward.
That's good to know. Yeah, we'll hope for the best.
Great restaurant. Right across the hall.
Okay.
And maybe we just take a few minutes to go.
That's
Great.
great.
It's the only restaurant with a foot.
Thanks.
Thank you. So our next
Thank you all very
presentation, I
much.
asked some folks from
You want
Sag
to introduce
Harbor.
us to Councilman Sidoni? Go ahead.
Sure, from the Steinbeck House to give us some updates on the Steinbeck homestead in Sag Harbor and some news from the village and any questions that the board might have. So, as you know, we purchased, yeah, come on up. We purchased, actually, we were a huge contributor to the purchase of the Steinbeck home using community preservation funds.
Hello, Susan.
We can still have reach you, don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on up, grab a seat.
And so with us today, we have Susan Mead, co-chair of the Sag Harbor Partnership, and Stephen Williams, architect review board, Village of Sag Harbor. Nice to meet you. Good to meet you. If you've ever-
He's going to do the first part.
Well, I've been honored to chair the Sag Harbor HPARB for about 2 years now. I was a member for a total of 6. And, we go through the mundane kind of process of arguing with owners of individual houses who want to modify federal regulations to meet their ambitions. And that can be very testy.
Because they're in a historic district.
Because they're in a historic district. But it's also very interesting to have the responsibility of maintaining the image and the characteristics of the village and the houses that are historic within the village. I think we, all being East Enders, I started my residency out here when I was 3 weeks old, so it's been about 10 or 20 years now. And there's a special sense of stewardship you get here. So Susan called me about 6 or 9 months ago, or wrote to me about supporting taking Two Bluff Road and making it a historic preservation, but understanding it was Steinbeck. And I had met her before and really come to respect her a great deal, that it could be more than that. So I did a little research and found out that about 96,000 buildings nationally are considered historic. Only 2,600 are considered landmarks. And given that we're talking about Pulitzer Prize winner and the Nobel Prize winner, and the things that he did, and his wife did, his third wife, Elaine, did, that I thought that it deserved a little more prominence, a higher profile, so to speak. And so when I discussed or communicated with Susan about that idea, she did some research and came to agree with me. I think it's very important. I know that in Southampton, there's been a recent move to emphasize the history and the arts and culture, and certainly this man was a major contributor to the arts and culture of the country and the world. I will just digress to say one of my first summer reading books as an adolescent was Travels with Charlie.
Me too.
Okay. And I didn't realize, so it was interesting because I think my father kept it a secret that John Steinbeck was, then living in Sag Harbor, and Charlie. And so when I used to ride my bicycle downtown, I had, besides buying a comic book or whatever I was doing, I had two goals. One was to see if I could ever see Charlie, and the other was John Woodward. So I didn't see either one of them. Okay, so, but anyway, and then reading other of his books, he was a unique man who took an individual position, one that was not popular with his neighbors or his friends, but was compassionate for people and their challenges in life from all levels. Some of his neighbors on the West Coast called him a communist or socialist because he unveiled some local secrets. I think now he'd probably be called a progressive. And on reflection, I didn't realize that how much some of his writings had influenced how I saw the world. And so I was honored that she sought my opinion. Hopefully I gave her a good one. And I think it would be good for the village, for the town, it's plural because we're in both, to enhance our image and to acknowledge his gift to the nation.
So on that note, we will be applying for National Register landmark status, not just building status, based on, he did research too, of the level. And it's, for example, in Texas, we only have two. One's the Alamo. It's a very, very prestigious listing. In Sag Harbor, as an individual property, Steve's board and the Board of Trustees has approved it as a local landmark. It's not the same thing. National Register would normally be a building unless you can demonstrate, as he's articulated, that it can be a national landmark. So we'll be doing that next, but we wanted to let you know that the first step of the local designation was complete. In addition to that, our agreement with you charges us to have the Steinbeck House Committee incorporated, and we got our filing with the Secretary of State done. I've sent both the documents to Jacqueline and Daniel. So anything I get, I send to them that is part of the compliance. Now we will be filing for a 501c3. And at that point, pursuant to the agreement we have with you all, the property will go from the partnership to the newly incorporated not-for-profit that has a representation you wanted. We have everyone represented that you wanted with one exception, and that is a member from another school district. So if you all have someone you can recommend or can direct me to a superintendent outside of Sag Harbor that I should call, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
But it's a 13-person board. So far, we have a max of 15. We get that person, we will have a slot. I personally am staying on until the end of the year, until I get all these sort of mundane things done. And Diana Howard has been elected as chair, and she's on the partnership board, and she will carry on. And in terms of tours, 351 people have already gone on tours, and we have 74 people signed up so far for Labor Day weekend. Saturday's completely sold out, and we're working on Sunday and Monday. Booked. Oh, I don't mean sold out. It's free.
Yeah.
We've gotten the hopper underwritten twice by Barron's Cove and once by Sotheby's, which at $2,000 a time has been a huge help. And that's work. That little hopper has been a joy for people to get on. We take them all the way to the property. The other compliance thing that you have charged us with is building 3 additional parking spaces. And the survey that we had 2 areas we were looking at, and the survey that Jacqueline and we agreed was the best was inside the property, off, away from the street. And the surveyor didn't go out there and notice that there were 3 giant trees in the way. So we got Chris LaGuardia, who's a international planner, to help us, and he's along with our naming plaques, including yours. And I would say we'll be filing hopefully sometime next week. And we'll go through that approval process, and then we can get the parking built. We've got the money identified. Rachel Inch-Pools, Rachel is on the board, and he's a worker, and he's gonna do the work at a below market cost. So that's where we are. The toughest part of this is finding enough docents. We've had 51 so far, and that's the biggest challenge, because we know more now. We know we're paring down. We started out with 4, and now we're down to 3 on holiday weekends, and we think as it gets colder we can get down to 2, but it's tough to find these docents.
Are you paying them, or is it volunteer?
Oh, it's volunteer. We don't have the money to pay anybody.
That's why it's so hard.
Yeah, oh yeah. We have a fundraiser coming up. We're trying to raise money, the partnership is, to fund a part-time administrative assistant who in a pinch could be also serve as a docent. But yeah, so that's, no, we haven't paid anybody.
Could I ask you a question about the National Registry?
Yeah.
Because the town's gone through that process. And
I used to
just-
work there.
Yeah, so I recall how difficult it actually, and time-consuming it was. So when you're corresponding with Jack Fenlon and Dan, that information should probably, and is shared with our Landmark and
Okay.
Historic Districts Board, because there's some resources there that you may
That'd be
be able to
great.
avail yourself of.
We've got an intern who's gonna help me we've got the research. Because I got it from the State Historic Preservation Officer to give Steve's group. So we have, but to get additional landmark status, it would be very helpful.
Yeah, it would, and
That'd be great.
That's why I think it's should be a
Yeah.
little bit more intertwined there.
Because we'll need more specific, a bigger story than what we have now in order to get landmark status.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
It's a great idea. Any questions?
No, please consider Lars Clemenson from Hampton Bays High School to.
What's the name?
Lars Clemenson,
Okay.
superintendent at Hampton Bays.
Oh,
Went to
okay.
school in Texas.
Oh, he did? Where?
That's awesome.
Oh,
I think
by
he
the
went to
way,
UT
our
Austin.
first writer is coming. Her name is Carrie Moore. And UT's changed broadened the selection group, the pool. The fall is going to be people that have graduated from the Writing Center program, the Michener Center program, or graduate students, which they have always said they would be doing. They're opening the spring writer up to anybody from anywhere, from any school, which is great. And then the summer, they're going international. And the woman that's coming in the fall is named Carrie Moore. You're going to be invited to a cocktail party at my house if you want to come and to introduce her to the community. And she won primarily according to Brett Johnston, on her community outreach portion of the application, because she researched Sands so thoroughly that I think everybody over in Sands will be thrilled. And so and she's finishing up her first novel. So expect to see Sands mentioned probably somehow.
Sands?
Sag Harbor Hills, As You Rest in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lars actually went to UT
right on
Austin.
Oh, it did, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh,
Did
that'd
probably
be great.
180 water mains there.
Hampton Bays, I got it.
Scavone Plumbing.
Listen, Scavone was the plumber to our house, and Crossan was the carpenter, and a little, if you don't mind, I think you and I were on the deck of, it was then called Yellowfin Yellowtail. Remember?
Yeah.
And there was Caribbean music, the sun was setting, and you came over to me and you said, gee, how this village has changed. And
What
I
year
like
was that?
70 something or 81, something like that.
I think it was Zydeco.
Yeah, right. So, so your family's certainly legendary. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
But I want to thank you guys. I can't tell you how great it was that we had the unanimous vote. It's
Well, it's-
after a lot of work.
Sounds like it's going really well. It's off to
Yeah,
a good start.
everybody loves it. I mean, you know, what we do is we say to all the people that come, I've been a docent I like doing the docent van work, because then I get to be on the van and I start them all talk all the way, and then I take them on a property tour. We always ask them to give us feedback. How can we make this better?
Well, yeah, our job was relatively easy. I mean, we couldn't have done this without a local partner. And I think we understood the importance of preserving
Yeah.
the
you do.
house and the property, but it was, you know, we could bring in financial resources, but that alone wasn't enough. We needed, you know, boots on the ground.
And I don't think people realize how much work this is.
Yeah.
Or Diana.
I certainly had
doing a great
a
job.
inkling as to the level of work it would, you know, and
Yeah.
you guys also, you also brought in financial resources too, significant. It was a lot of local money raised
Yeah,
to do
it
this. That was not easy. But now the hard work of actually keeping this house aligned with the mission that the board supported and the community supported, that's ongoing work. But, you know, none of this, I appreciate you thanking us, but I want to thank you too.
Thank you.
Because you
And
the
UT's doing a
Sag
great
Harbor
job.
Partnership, well, you know, we are partners with the partnership.
And it should be noted that the state of New York also contributed a
Yeah.
significant grant, $750,000.
It's a reimbursement grant.
So an
Yeah.
assemblyman got that done.
He
as
sure
well.
did.
Mhm.
But and UT is you know, we gave them a list of landscapers and plumbers, and you're on the list, and, you know, the whole 9 yards. And the grounds are 150% better looking now than they were, and Martyrs is going to plant the beds for us with perennials, deer-proof.
Mobile
What ended
work.
up happening with the pool?
Well, the pool is covered, and Alex, Rachel, and his father are putting together, John Rachel, it's Rachel Lynch Pools, are putting together a plan to turn it into a water feature that's very shallow. And they have 2 plans, and they're supposed to come back with them anytime, and then they're gonna contribute as much of the cost to change it. We'll have to take it to the ARB. And then we have to raise some money in addition.
Like a koi pond or something like that, or no, just
A
a
reflecting
fountain?
pool or.
It'll be, that we talked about a reflecting pool, or putting stones on the bottom, and, you know, so you'll see some different variations in shadows, and they showed us pictures of both.
Okay.
And the primary purpose is to eliminate the liability, not change the shape of the pool or the meaning of the pool, but we just haven't gotten to that yet.
But also somehow asking the question, like, what would John Steinbeck have here if it wasn't a pool? I mean, that's an interesting question. How can
Yeah.
you create a water feature that somehow relates back to one of his
That's a
books.
good question, and I don't know what the answer is.
Well, I mean, he was
He likes
marine
fish.
research and biology. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it could be
It seems to be, yeah.
So you're
something like
thinking we should
that.
have fish in it?
So it's, yeah, a koi pond might be interesting to have, you
We're
know, fish
also
swimming
trying to
around.
have it low maintenance.
Yeah.
Pools are expensive.
Right.
Well, what,
Especially
I-
when
but
they
I'll
not
pitch
have a
it.
child
I'll
fall
tell
in
Alex that,
Mhm.
and see what it, you know, he and his dad say.
Yeah.
But they've come out and checked it, they cleaned up a bunch of stuff that was wrong, and they've just been great. And we're not losing him, he's on the board. Diana and I like put a net over him.
Right, well, it's just an interesting question to,
It is an
How
interesting
do you-
question,
what's gonna fit in with the property,
right.
and maybe give you something to talk about as well.
We hadn't thought about it, so thanks,
Yeah,
it's good,
okay.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming
Thank you.
in, thank you for the update.
See you guys, thank you.
Okay. Now I get to go to hot Texas for 2
Yellow
days.
face.
Oh,
108.
yeah. I have a friend in
It's a
Austin.
dry heat.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's what they told me. Phoenix Warriors.
All right, I guess we could do some quick updates. So the Moody's report came out, and we were reaffirmed at AAA. I'm very happy to report. I haven't seen what interest rates, I think we went out, I think yesterday, to the bond market, but the report was excellent. It, you know, once again stressed the strong financial conditions of the town, our strong reserves, our property valuation, which our assessed valuation now is somewhere in the mid 90, I think 95, 96 billion dollars of all the value within the town of real property, when adjusted for the equalization rate, which we now have. But when you divide that by the population, you get a value per person of about $1.5 million in value per individual, which is really well beyond the metrics that Moody's is typically looking for in some of their other AAA communities. You know, our ability to pay back our debt is unquestionable between, you know, the real value here and the Suffolk County Tax Act, which the county is responsible to pay property taxes to us if somebody doesn't pay their property taxes, but our ability to collect it is, you know, without question. So, but they did stress the financial management team, our conservative budgeting, and you know, the path that we've been on over the course has put our town in a very, very strong financial position. There's no question. And that was recognized by Moody's. If you get a chance, read the report. So we are AAA with a stable outlook, which is very nice, moving into the future. And,
Shall be noted
and that
that-
ultimately will save our taxpayers a lot of money in interest rates. John, that's probably what you were gonna say, but.
Well, I was gonna say that Moody's gives the United States of America a AA+ rating. So, they
Yeah, we're
have a
higher
higher
than
credit
the-
rating than the United States of
Yeah.
America.
Doesn't really
Well,
So
surprise
we're,
me.
we're the highest rating. I really firmly believe that if they had a rating higher than AAA, we would qualify for that. I told Moody's that if we're not AAA, I don't know why, because we meet or exceed all of their standards for rating. And Dorothy did a great job, Noah did a great job. We really put together a strong presentation. And it will save our taxpayers, because when we go out to bid, you know, we're out for some, I want to say 15 million in borrowing.
Right, you really can't overstate the point with our interest rates. We have incredibly low rates because of this credit rating.
And of course, the things we're going out to bond for, you know, like the expansion to the police station, all the things that we're doing are in the public interest and will make our community an even stronger place. But I wanted to report that, and,
Well, I actually had a question, because I did read the report, and I was a little disappointed in our environmental rating, which Moody's does include in its certifications for us, or for the municipality. And then I realized that when they look at our CPF fund, they don't consider that as part of and having an environmental impact. In other words, there's no way for them to see that. So I'm just gonna suggest to the next supervisor, whoever that is to correct that, because it's gonna become more and more of an issue in financial,
Well, they get it back out. Look, we have a lot of money in the bank right now.
Yeah.
For land preservation.
but they don't see the
And
individual.
we have $1 billion of property that we own, thousands and thousands of acres. But yeah.
Little over 5 now.
Yeah, a little over 5,000 acres. So, yeah, they sort of back that out of the equation when they're looking at the town
Yeah,
finances.
not very well, that's all I wanted to point
Yeah,
out, because we're doing a,
but
we're doing a
we're
lot
still
here.
AAA, and if you added that in, it would only get better.
Better, it would be
Because
quadruple that.
those lands, that $1 billion of land, which is, honestly probably worth several billion now with the, because property values have gone up over time.
Well, some
Those
have
are
landmarked properties. on it.
Those are common lands.
Mhm.
So when you buy a property in Southampton, not only do you own the piece of ground where your house sits, but you are a collective owner of the common lands, which are in excess of $1 billion. So it adds value to all the, and it is sort of reflected probably in some of our property values, but it's important to
yeah, it's
know.
just that I'm kind of having a little fun, but it's, it's not directly noted that way, particularly because CPF does.
They do
it does
ask,
look
they
at
did
it.
ask on the environmental front questions about resiliency, about climate change and sea level rise. And, I was able to talk about the FIM project, which is, significant federal funding to re-nourish the beaches and some of the other policies that we've put in place to address, floodplain elevations and things like that. So, I think Moody's was impressed by how we're addressing some of those impacts. Some of our sustainability programs, our HERS ratings and things like that, our building codes. So, we're trying to move into the future as best prepared as we can be. And I appreciate all the work you've done in that regard too.
Thank you. It's the whole board, and,
Yeah.
I'd like to see it reflected that.
I felt, as an outgoing supervisor, I didn't mention to them that this is my last year. But I did feel a real sense of pride in the town's finances and what we have done up until this point in terms of fiscal management.
No, I
where,
totally agree with you.
And the fact that, we put the freeze in place on, market trend assessments, and we've been able to navigate that without, we haven't pierced the tax cap once, which is incredible. I am working on the budget now. It's a challenge because there's requests across the board for more people in highway, and police, and other parks, and
Our population
and,
is increasing.
dealing with an inflationary environment that's, driven up the cost of everything we procure. And some of the changes we've had to make to secure our workforce, and,
And we have more people.
it is.
Maintenance.
Yeah, and we try to keep the cost of things like permits down,
All the CPF properties we maintain.
we have to maintain CPF properties, I'm sorry, John, so there are, it is, and I said this last year, was a complicated budget then, some of the things that are helping, well, mortgage tax isn't gonna be as strong as it was, but it's still projected to come in where we projected, or maybe even a little bit higher. One place where we're doing well, is in interest, so we're able to, as we collect all the tax money, we're able to put it in interest-bearing accounts, and we're seeing a higher interest rate than I projected in the '23 budget, so we're gonna come out probably with $1 million in extra, interest, from the banks that hold our money, which is good. It'll make up for some of the losses and some of the higher costs for healthcare, and pension costs, and some of the other things that are coming in higher, particularly healthcare, significantly higher than what we budgeted. And CPF funds, I mentioned this the other day, are not coming in this year where they were last year. Right now, we're about, year-to-date, about 50%. Last year, I think we took in about I want to say 95 million, something in that range, but year-to-date, I would say it was around 60 million, and to year-to-date this year, around 30 million so far. That's,
We're
I
getting
think,
back to
through June.
2019 numbers.
Yeah, so that I think only includes through June, but we're 50,
Yeah, I was
the
gonna
first
say.
half of the year is 50% of what it was the year before.
That's a 6-month projection.
That is still good. Like, if we come in at a $60 million CPF, that is better than a lot of the years the CPF fund. But we got sort of spoiled in the pandemic year. We had one year hit 120. That's gonna affect what's available in the future for water quality, what's available in the future for CPF pilot, tax payments and things like that. So it's something we should be mindful of. And, you know, this is a harder year because I think of interest rates. Interest rates being 7%, 8% is affecting the real estate market, in my opinion. So, and it's not just locally, it's a national effect. So, and we did see a big surge during the pandemic in values out here. So it may be taking some time to catch up a little bit to that. That sort of lifted the values up very quickly. So that's in terms of reports. Let me turn it over to you guys. Anything else you want to share?
Sure. Tonight is the second of two public hearings in the Village of North Haven regarding a park development that the village is undertaking. We want our professionals in the Community Preservation Fund to hear from the public in that area. Rick is going to be there tonight, so thank you for being there. And so we'll let the board know how that goes. And you'll probably be getting a report from Jackie and Dan in Community Preservation Funds. We are going to be approving what the village eventually does there. I think it's a pretty good model. Also, I want to kind of put on the board's radar about an application in a neighboring town at EBCAL. This is the former U.S. Navy site where Grumman developed F-14s and F-4s. There is an application to develop a 1 million square foot commercial facility there with transportation components. They're going to be upgrading the runways, and the reason I bring it to us is because one of those runways points pretty much right at East Quogue, and if this does turn out to be a freight facility, it's going to be a major freight facility. I listened to the applicant say that phase one is going to be 1 million square feet of commercial space. In the final phase, it's going to be 10 million square feet of commercial space with over 1 million square feet of flex space. So they're really, in my opinion, not necessarily being transparent with what this thing is actually going to end up being, and it's on our borders. So my question to the IDA was whether or not seeker had been done, and if the town of Southampton as an interested party was included in that. So there it is. A lot to say. It's going to be in the pipeline for quite a while, I believe. But
Yeah,
it's in front of the IDA now.
It's been an ongoing problem for years, and coming to this point is going to be interesting.
And the town board has put it to the Riverhead IDA, which is kind of an interesting maneuver. So just wanted the board to be updated on that and say it in one of our work sessions.
John, you have anything?
No, I'm fine.
Cindy?
So we received a press release from Chris Brenner, Southampton Fire Department ex-chief and the current public information officer, that I just want to read, just so everyone's aware. On Saturday, August 19th, the Southampton Fire Department hosted its annual Chicken and Rib Barbecue fundraiser to raise funds for our Benevolent Association and our Antique Truck Committee. The night started off with many people enjoying the food and festivities. At approximately 6:30 p.m., a male subject who was attending the event suddenly collapsed in front of the stage. Within seconds, 4 paramedics and 5 EMTs from the Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance who were off duty and attending the event, as well as numerous firefighters, were at the patient's side. The patient was gray, had no pulse, was not breathing, and determined to be in cardiac arrest. CPR was initiated and an AED was applied. Numerous rounds of CPR were performed, and just prior to the ambulance arrival, the patient began to breathe and regained his pulse. The patient was then transported by the Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance to an awaiting medevac and finally to Stony Brook University Hospital. At time of press release, the patient is alive and making progress on his recovery. Southampton Fire Department Assistant Chiefs Paulus Walker and Richard Fowler, as well as Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance Chief Kyle McGinnis and Assistant Chief Colby Gill were all on scene and would like to thank and commend all people involved on a successful revival of a pulseless patient. Southampton Fire Department and the Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance train for incidents on a regular basis, and on that night, the hard work and training paid off. And I just want to add, I was at that event. It's like one of my favorite events of the summer because the food is great. There's amazing people there. But I was there from the start and through the end of this incident. And when I tell you the professional level that patient, and I happen to actually know the patient, most of the people there did not know what was going on. They did not know that somebody was, completely out of the juniors for the fire department. These are young kids. The juniors and members of the fire department formed a human wall to give the patient respect and they were actually performing CPR, and also the children at the event wouldn't witness what was going on. And I mean, it was done and over, and the patient was, nobody knew what was going on until the ambulance arrived and he was getting taken out. So it was just, like I said, the professionalism and the care and the training. And I know none of these guys consider themselves heroes for this, but I mean, somebody said if you had to go down, this was the place and the time to go down, because he had 4 of the most amazing EMTs on him in seconds. So, and it's actually the father-in-law of a town employee. So,
Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a remarkable story.
So I always get to lighten the mood on these. Last night, the Southampton Town Youth Bureau had their last teen night at Loveland Park. A little less attended than past years. Little did they know that the school football season and cheerleading and all that just started this week. But it was quite a bit of fun. You had Coach Roddy there with the kids playing basketball like he's done for so long. And the jousting ring, actually, nobody got hurt. So it was a nice night. It was good to see them in action. Tonight with Parks and Rec concert at Good Ground Park, we haven't had one in about a month because of weeks off and rainouts, is Noise tonight at 6 p.m.
But it's actually music, but they're called Noise.
Yeah.
oh, and I went yesterday. I had lunch with Ray D'Angelo at the Hampton Bays Senior Center.
Oh, nice.
It's a very nice lunch. That senior center, I'm telling you. There's this woman there. She's 93 years old, drives herself there every day. She drives once a week to her daughters in Levittown. And they treat that place like their second home. They were going for chair yoga. It's just a great, they have their little groups.
Bingo days.
Yeah.
So,
So,
I've met her too.
pretty amazing.
It's a great facility.
It is. Very well attended.
Just a couple things. I don't. The village held their meeting on the Pond Lane Park.
They did.
I think they
There
did
were
that the same night we were here, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So we need to get a sort of an update of how that went. I know there's some pushback on
Pond
the
Lane.
Pond Lane issue. The idea is to basically expand Lake Agawam Park a little further around the lake and create more places for the community to enjoy the waterfront. Part of that plan would be to convert a portion of Pond Lane into a bike lane, pedestrian lane. That there's some controversy, and I'm not surprised about it, but I think it's sort of a critical component of the park design. And we're being asked to purchase the bigger of the two vacant lots as part of it, and then the other one will be donated. So it's something that we need to follow, I think, fairly closely. And then there was a ribbon cutting for the Bridgehampton Child Care Center, which is a really nice event that the governor actually attended. Fred Thiel gave a very moving speech. Other people spoke as well, obviously including the governor and Bonnie Cannon. And the building looks great. Some of you may have been there, but it really is a great new addition to that childcare center. They have a lot of plans in the future too for more recreation in the back, including a swimming pool. But, you know, I was there in the pandemic, for the groundbreaking. And I got to see Bonnie get into a little excavator and knock down one of the walls of the old building. And, boy, just don't get in her way. She doesn't need that backhoe. You know, she's very, she's a real driving force behind all of this. And really, you know, driven by her faith and her love of the community and the children. And she, you know, with others, got it done, really. And it's a great resource for these kids, let me tell you. All right, so we do have other things to do. We have executive session, personnel, we have contracts, we have acquisitions. So, no CPF, I guess, today.
No.
So I will make a motion to end our work session, go into executive session on those items.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved, I guess, or we are adjourned. Except for the executive session.